In 2019, Walibi Holland, located in the Netherlands, unveiled their brand new roller coaster creation from Rocky Mountain Construction. This was a conversion of their old Robin Hood wooden coaster, which operated the park for 18 years. It was built by Vekoma, one of the few Vekoma wooden roller coasters in the world. I actually got a chance to experience it in its last operating year, and it was definitely not great. It absolutely had a reputation for being a pretty rough ride, which is something that Untamed is not. This ride is absolutely nothing like the previous attraction. All that wood track is now steel. The ride flips you through 5 different inversions. It's taller, it's faster, and Walibi Holland went from having one of the worst rides in the country to now arguably the best coaster in the country. So this is going to be my full in-depth review of the attraction. I got the opportunity to ride it about a dozen times. I went on a pretty dead day. I was able to just lap this thing for several hours, it felt like, and it's a really fun ride experience. It's a little powerhouse. Now, if you've had the opportunity to do one of these roller coasters by Rocky Mountain Construction, you know that they vary in size. So you have the much larger ones like Zadra and Iron Gwazi, Steel Vengeance. And then you have some of the smaller, like mid-tier rides, like Twisted Cyclone, Storm Chaser, Twisted Timbers. That's kind of where Untamed fits in. But even then, it's a bit on the larger side. It's about 120 feet tall, max speed 57 miles per hour. But one thing I appreciate about this one is just the pure length of this ride. It's got 3,560 feet of track, which is more than Twisted Timbers, Storm Chaser, Wicked Cyclone, Joker, and Goliath. It also happens to be the RMC that features the most inversions at 5. That is with a 270-degree double inverting stall. That is 2 different inversions that act as that first element right after that drop. The ride descends at an 80-degree angle. You go into a little bunny hop, and then you flip upside down. You kind of stall out there, hanging at an angle, and then flip back the other way. It's a super unique element that currently only exists on this ride. You also have a step-up underflip, this wild, like way overbanked inversion where you're kind of hanging there to the left, and then this fast-paced barrel roll to end things out. But even though it has 5 inversions, this is still more of an Airtime-centric experience. Like, it is just absolutely wild how many elements they managed to pack into this thing. RMC has come out with some pretty crazy layouts in the past. I mean, a lot of them are very Airtime focused. You can find some similar maneuvers on a lot of them, but I also really appreciate those unique ones that make each of their individual rides stand out. And I think that's one of the many things that makes this company so fascinating. You can know what to expect with an RMC, but also still continue to get surprised. And that's actually one of the many things that you can learn about when you go and watch our documentary that we had the chance to make about Rocky Mountain Construction called This Is How We Roll. In this film, you get to go behind the scenes with the people that made this company happen. You get to see how Fred Grubb and Alan Schilke were able to come together to bring the iBox track to life, and get to see what sort of challenges they had to overcome with some of their many different projects, including their first one, New Texas Giant. It's a really awesome film that we spent over a year and a half working on to bring to life, and if you're interested in giving a watch, head to vimeo.com/ondemand/thisishowyrollmovie, and when you enter the promo code Untamed at checkout, you'll get 20% off your purchase. Now let's walk through this experience of riding Untamed. First things first, this ride was part of a big overhaul of the Sherwood Forest section of the park. It is now called the Wilderness. You enter under this beat-up VW Beetle, and Walibi Holland really went all out with this entrance for the attraction. I love this massive logo for Untamed. It makes for such a good photo op. And then this actual queue really pays homage to the old attraction. Because the area is called the Wilderness, everything is super overgrown. I mean, you're literally on like a dirt path as you're going through this extended queue, and you are passing running rails from Robin Hood. They've scattered them all throughout the area, and they have a hill with the old train right there for you to see. The whole idea is that something Untamed has come and taken over this area, and that's why the front of this train looks like this big scary bug looking thing. The actual station is set up like this big greenhouse. You hear ambient bird and insect noises when the station is quiet, and then when you dispatch, they have these really epic drums playing. It gets you so hyped for the ride you're about to do. Now, because Untamed is one of the later RMCs that has made its debut, it does have the swing axle trains. These are the same as like Steel Vengeance, Twisted Timbers, Iron Gwazi. It makes for a super smooth ride experience. As with every other RMC, I recommend riding in the front and the back. After my first couple rides, I said that I liked the front the best, but then after it sped up a bit more and I got to do it in the back a couple more times, I don't think I would say that the front is like way better. I think you can make an argument for the front and the back, honestly. I think the front was better for the different inversions, especially that 270-degree double inverting stall. But I've always been typically a backseat rider, especially when it comes to elements like the first drop and those big crazy airtime hills. And one thing I always appreciate about different RMCs is the different funky and creative ways they start out the ride. You know, the little section of track that they put in right before the lift hill. For Untamed, they start things off with an outer bank. You just crawl through this thing hanging at an angle before you start up your lift hill. It's totally awesome and hilarious. But that first drop is great. It's almost vertical. It's at an 80-degree angle. You just get thrown over it. This first bunny hop is very Steel Vengeance-esque. And honestly, this whole ride is Steel Vengeance-esque. I mean, I think it is very fitting to say this is the Steel Vengeance of Europe, even though it's like half the size. So if you like that ride at Cedar Point, you will for sure like this one too. So I talked a bit earlier about that first set of inversions, but following that, you enter a double up, and that second airtime hill ejects you upwards, and then you bank to the left, and that acts as one of your turnarounds. This whole layout is very funky, but if you looked in overhead view, it almost kind of forms like a U, like it wraps around and then you turn around and go back. So you're flying real low to the ground here. You enter an absolutely massive airtime hill. I know several of the people we were with when we were at Walibi Holland walked away from this day with bruises on their thighs because of how strong the airtime is, and it's hills like this one where that will really come into play. This next hill is pretty funky. At the apex, it banks you outward to the left and then immediately twists you back to the right. That's when you go into your step up underflip. Essentially, it acts as a 0G roll, but then the element twists you, banking now to the left. This is your true turnaround to now enter your return course. And one thing I really appreciate is the fluidity of these elements, how one immediately leads into the next. So this step up underflip throws you into this almost like high five kind of maneuver. You're hanging like 90 degrees sideways, and then you enter 3 airtime hills. But I love the way this is set up. It is essentially a double up and a double down built into one. So you go into your first airtime hill, rise up into your second, and then step down into your third. I can't think of too many roller coasters that have incorporated something like that. So after that, you have your fourth inversion. This is that crazy looking overbank where you're just like barely hanging upside down there, but it does count as an inversion. But then it just whips you sharply to the right, entering a smaller overbank. And now you're in the true return course of Untamed. And this is the part of the ride that really reminds you of Steel Vengeance, because now you are flying within the structure of Untamed. There's so many head and hand choppers. You're passing underneath previous elements, and everything is really low to the ground. So you got 2 back-to-back airtime hills, a twisted banked hill to the left, another ejector hill, and then that final inversion. This thing is so wicked. It's crazy fast-paced. And then you have the most surprising part of the ride, which is immediately after that final inversion, you then step down, and that's what sends you up into the brake run. So it's like a one final drop to just remind you that, oh yeah, this ride has a lot of airtime. It's a really sick finale. I think that was the standout part of Untamed for me. Don't get me wrong, first half is great, but it was that second half when it was like, whoa, this ride means business. Untamed packs a punch. There are absolutely no dead spots. Each element and moment sends you up out of your seat or flipping head over heels. And it's really re-rideable, and I really appreciate that. I didn't feel like it was too intense. That's going to be a turnoff for some people. You know, some RMCs are just all balls to the wall, insane. Like even Zadra in Poland, that ride has so much power to it that you really need to like have a serious breather after you do that one. This one, don't get me wrong, is a powerhouse, but not like the way Zadra is. And I don't say that in a bad way. I actually think that it's one of Untamed's strong points, and that's kind of why I like these mid-tier RMCs in terms of like size. Now at this point, I have ridden all of the operational RMCs, so I'm sure some people are wondering where I rank this. I would say the most similar RMC I would compare this to is Twisted Timbers at King's Dominion, which is a ride I've ridden well over 100 times. I think this is a really unique RMC layout, and I think they did an excellent job converting it based off of what they had to work with before. But personally, I just think I do lean towards Twisted Timbers at the end of the day, which to be honest is not something I expected. I actually thought that I would like Untamed more than Twisted Timbers. But in terms of recommendations for this ride, if you can, try and get more of your rides in later in the day. I really did feel like there was a big difference in how this ride warmed up. Earlier in the day, I thought it was probably a lower tier RMC, which is still great. It's still a really good ride, but it wasn't until after it really warmed up that I was like, okay, yeah, this is really good. And I know I've said this in a lot of other RMC reviews, but I'm serious. Like, the fact that I'm calling what I would consider a mid-tier RMC the best ride in the Netherlands just shows how incredible these layouts are and what this company does. I don't have any big criticisms for this coaster. I was thrilled that Robinhood got the RMC treatment. It's a million times better than that attraction. I really like how the park themed it and dressed it up. And I think it's got everything you could ask for in an RMC layout. And I also appreciate how different it is from the other 2 operating RMCs in Europe. The one criticism I've heard that I can understand is some people who say that a lot of those airtime hills on this roller coaster feel repetitive, which is the same complaint that Steel Vengeance gets a lot. So I understand it. I don't mind it because the airtime is so good. So for Untamed's final score, I am giving it a 10 out of 10. RMC knocked it out of the park with this one. I love what this ride did for the park, as well as for the coaster enthusiast community in this part of the world. I think this ride got a lot of people excited about RMC roller coasters and just roller coasters in general. And clearly the park's thrilled with it too, because they're already planning on adding a second RMC with one of their Raptor coasters. So if Untamed wasn't enough reason to go out to Walibi Holland, I'm sure a second RMC will do the job just fine. So let me know down in the comments below if you've ridden Untamed at Walibi Holland, if you agree with the points that I brought up. And of course, if you're interested in learning more about Rocky Mountain construction and hearing the story told from the people behind the company, be sure to use that promo code Untamed when you go to vimeo.com/ondemand/thisishowwerollmovie. Thank you guys so much for joining, and we'll see you next time.